and welcome to This Is. In front of us is the future of the Mac. Toss your old PC in the garbage, it clearly can't hang anymore. Toss your old MacBook in the dumpster fire because the M1 Macs are here.
I've been playing with this now for a little bit, and you know what? It feels exactly like a MacBook. And
Wait. Is that your whole premise?
No.
It's a MacBook. It feels like a MacBook.
And I don't mean that in a negative way.
Okay, go ahead.
So in our last video, we talked about this. There's a lot of speculation of, should you wait and get a MacBook now? Should you wait for the M1? Should you wait until the M2? You should 100% jump on the M1 MacBook bandwagon. I don't know.
Oh, it's a bandwagon at this point.
It's really good.
So right now we have 3 M1 Macs available, as I almost scratched the back of the MacBook.
Stop damaging new stuff.
This is a 13-inch MacBook Pro. So we also have a MacBook Air, and that model is only M1. So while you can still get the Intel models of the Mac Mini, which is also available with M1, and the 13-inch Pro, if you want to buy a MacBook Air now, they are purely M1 powered,
Yes.
which is interesting. We have the shell removed.
Whoops.
Oops. I totally didn't lose that inside the system. So, as you can see, as I hide the thing I accidentally left inside, we have the MacBook opened up. So, this seems to be somewhat similar, though it is a bit different. So we have a single cooling fan, and then I'm assuming underneath here is our SoC. We have our batteries. Now, of course, surprising exactly no one, there is no upgradable component whatsoever on the inside of these new MacBooks, right? So we have what I assume is probably our SSD in the controller. This seems to be our M1 chip here. I'm not even sure what's under this. I'm not even gonna open it because it's probably just generic labeling. So, why should you buy an M1 MacBook? Well, there are a few reasons, but the main one is absolutely this, the M1 processor.
Yeah,
I caught it, okay? Continue your point as if nothing went wrong.
So the M1 MacBooks aren't doing anything different than the Intel-based MacBooks, but they're just doing it more efficiently.
So top line, the M1 Macs are significantly better in pretty much every way. So they have a lot in common with the iPad and the iPhone chips, just significantly beefed up for Mac purposes. So we're talking about an 8-core CPU, which will not only blow away pretty much all of the previous like MacBook Airs and whatnot, but even rivals and beats in a lot of cases stuff like the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which requires significantly more power, more fans,
This definitely
heat.
beat my not 16, but it definitely beat my i9 15. Yeah.
So not only are you getting more performance on the CPU side, you're also getting significantly better graphics chips, right? So the GPUs built into these systems are, by most benchmarks, at least as good as something like the base 15-inch MacBook Pro, which again is a much larger, much more power-hungry system, and you're doing it all with better battery life the entire time. Plus, because these are the ARM MacBooks, you have things like, okay, look, so it's awake right now. Move it down here. Close it. It's asleep. There's a train coming. I don't care. Open it up. Instantly awake. There's no delay. It's just like your phone when you unlock it compared to a standard Mac where you have to open it up, wait the 3 seconds, touch ID. There's so much about these which are significantly better. Better battery life, better performance, better security, and importantly, the app compatibility is all still here. So if you're familiar with the ARM transition on Windows, essentially a lot of apps, if they're not specifically made for ARM processors on the Windows side, can run, but they're running in backwards compatibility mode. It's slow, it's clunky, you can definitely see the difference. Here on the MacBooks, first of all, they have a great compatibility layer in Rosetta, which essentially does all of the work in sort of translating all of the x86 code to ARM code, so it will just run. But on top of that, because these chips are so fast, even running a lot of Intel-based apps, it will run them faster than the old MacBooks would, which is crazy town.
Yeah, so there are trade-offs to using these new MacBooks, which can be significant for some people, depends on your use case. The biggest one is the port selection.
Yeah.
Every time you do something to that, like, what are you doing?
I'm showing off the ports, Matt.
Yeah.
See, look, everyone can see the ports right now. They're
All
so
right.
incredible
Fake
that you'll
news.
never believe how great they are in every way. Just wonderful, just incredible.
There are 2
Just beautiful.
USB 4 ports, which are backwards compatible with Thunderbolt 3.
Where's
Unfortunately, you're losing 2 ports compared to the previous MacBook
Who needs
Pro.
them? No one needs them. USB 4 essentially is just Thunderbolt 3. Is the
Correct.
best way to think about it. It's actually not quite the same, but USB 4 incorporates all of the functions of Thunderbolt 3, which include things like power in,
Yeah.
video, backwards compatibility with older USB. Like these, essentially, it's the same, right? You've got the same sort of functionality, except that on these ARM MacBooks, there are a couple of limitations, specifically in that you can no longer connect an external GPU. Now that might change at some point in the future, but besides that, you can plug into like your 6K XDR display, all the USB-C accessories, dongles, all that stuff should just work as if this was a completely normal MacBook.
So the reasoning behind losing those 2 ports is actually because the ARM architecture has less PCI lanes than the x86.
Well, the way they've built the M1,
Yes.
I assume an M1X would probably solve that.
So that's like that, and that's really the what it comes down to with the port selection.
There will almost certainly be a M1X,
Right.
which is like a 12 core something, which can go in something like a 16-inch MacBook or an iMac, or who knows, even maybe a 4-port version of the Pro if you want to get a little bit more performance. Because one of the nice things about these chips is that while they're incredibly powerful, they're also very power efficient, right? So you look at something like the MacBook Air, which we will actually have in shortly. So again, make sure you're subscribed. But the MacBook Air runs without a fan, right?
Completely fanless.
Which makes sense because you think about the iPad, right? The iPad Pro has tons of power and that has no fan, it's even thinner, right? So even something like the MacBook Air, like the difference between all of these M1 Macs is very minimal. The only real difference in performance with the fan is when you get into long, intensive tasks, right? So say you're doing a long video editor, you're doing a lot of rendering, or you're playing a game or something, only then will these fans kick on, and that's where you'll see a little bit of a difference in performance from like the Air to the Pro. But for most people, that's not going to be a regular use case, and even then, even with the fan cranking at 100%, you're not getting that much more for performance, right? These are very, very power-sipping chips.
One of the main reasons I love the iPad so much is, one, it's super small.
Of course.
But then I can use it for hours and hours and hours on a single battery life. Charge, and that's what I'm excited for this. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. I would have loved to seen like the 12-inch return for one of these chips, but this is, I think, a really good compromise. This is just something I wish that Apple would have done, is do one on either side of it.
Oh, so one Thunderbolt, Thunderbolt, like the Razer
Yeah, yeah. It makes things a little bit more ergonomic. You know, I dock my system a lot.
Yeah.
So now I pretty much have to dock it upside down, which is not going to be great for airflow. In order to where it's on my desk. It's nitpicking, but like I just if you're only going to have 2, I wish they would have done one on either side.
Apple's gotten a lot of over the last few years for selling Macs that would thermal throttle, that would run really hot, that would be obviously really taxing. And now that we've seen the performance of the M1 Macs, it is really clear that they were designing for these all along. They were designing super thin, super sleek devices. The Intel processors that were inside were simply too hot and too inefficient to be able to deliver that level of performance without needing the fans to be cranked up to 100%. You look at a cooling solution like this, right? Single fan, one heat pipe, very, very minimal. But this is more than sufficient to cool the chip inside this MacBook. It's like the designs for these MacBooks over the last few years were ready for the M1.
Right.
The M1 and the software weren't ready for the Macs yet.
And I mean, you talk about the fan and the efficiency. So while running Cinebench, the fan didn't kick on until like 5 minutes into the test.
It's crazy.
So, running the full multi-core stress test, it was fine. I think the biggest improvement for people are going to be those who actually use the Mac, the Apple apps already. So Final Cut, I think, will get should get a big update with this. I think that Logic will get a big update with this. Where it's going to be interesting to see how much of an improvement this is on something like Adobe, where it's not first party.
It's running compatibility. So a lot of apps are being updated to be native on Apple Silicon, but I believe something like Premiere is running under Rosetta. It's just the normal Intel version. And even though I know it's maybe a touch glitchy, I've still seen some people run benchmarks, and it's actually faster on this than on the completely dedicated Intel version. So once the update, it's going to be even better. I do think if you look at the current line, the Air is the no-brainer, right? Very few people, I think, will be better served spending the extra money on the Pro, because really the only major differences are it's a little bit thicker, you get a little bit more battery, you get a slightly brighter screen, and you get the fan, which can be helpful, but generally speaking, if you're not spending tons of time video rendering, and even then, it's not gonna be a huge difference. The Mac Mini is in its own league. I feel like it is very inexpensive. It is a perfect little video editing box. Like, I just assumed that, like, when I was 16, 17, first learning how to video edit, if I could have spent $600, $700, saved up that kind of money for a Mac Mini, it would have completely changed my life. And I honestly think that given the performance that we're seeing with these M1 chips, with something like Final Cut, that a little Mac Mini editing box could be all you need. But, it is not quite that simple for everyone because we have to keep in mind, these are the entry-level Macs. You cannot outfit them with more than 16 gigs of RAM.
And so that's one of the trade-offs that we were talking about before. You notice that there are no SODIMM slots on here whatsoever. So with these M1 chips, the RAM is actually part of the chip. That's
probably like right here.
Yeah. Again, because of just the efficiency of, and everything being built for this. Like, Big Sur is built for the M1 chip. At every level, it's optimized in every aspect.
Yeah.
So that's just, I think, what a lot of people fail to kind of get their heads around.
The thing is with the M1, right? These cores, so they have 4 of the Firestorm cores, the high performance cores. Those cores are the most powerful cores on anything, full stop, period. I'm not talking about like for performance per watt or whatever. I'm saying if you throw a single threaded workload at one of these cores, it will perform as good, if not better, than your overclocked Core i9, your Ryzen 9 5950X, and that's like considering that you've got like crazy clock speeds and like 50 watts and all this kind of craziness, right? Obviously, when you get into multi-core workloads, if you have a 64-core Threadripper, it is going to beat this. But if you're talking about single core, like individual core workloads, this tiny MacBook is now the most powerful CPU core on the face of the planet at this little fan, right? That's all you need.
With something like this, you just don't need that crazy amount of like your desktop PC looks so overkill now.
But the MacBook doesn't have RGB.
It doesn't have RGB, so that's why this can't game. That's the only reason that you can't game on a Mac is because it doesn't have RGB.
If you were in the market for a new MacBook, especially the Air, but any of these Macs I think are solid wins. Huge performance leaps that we see once every generation, right? I mean that in like, this is a huge leap. Now, if you are a professional workflow person buzzword, you may want to hold off, but I think the only reason to hold off is to see what that M1X chip looks like. That would be powering something like a 16-inch MacBook or an iMac, or of course something like the Mac Pro, that will ultimately deliver even more performance with something like more ports.
This will 100% become my new daily driver.
I've already broken it, but you're welcome to take it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to This Is for more quality content, in quotes, because it's obviously neither quality and questionably content. And until the next time I break something and then give it to Matt, thank you very much for watching.